Have you ever noticed how the world seems designed to push your buttons? Every notification, every news headline, every difficult person you encounter feels like it's specifically crafted to make you lose your mind. Well, here's something that might shock you. Ancient philosophers from 2,000 years ago faced the exact same chaos we do today, and they developed a foolproof system for staying calm in the storm. Today, I'm going to show you how to become completely unshakable, no matter what life throws at you. We're drowning in chaos right now. Information overload, political madness, and social media outrage, global crises hitting us from every angle. Your brain wasn't designed to handle this much stimulation, and frankly, neither was mine. But while everyone else is losing their minds, there's a small group of people who seem to glide through it all with this almost supernatural calm. They're not robots. They're not emotionless. They have just mastered something that most people never learn: how to control their emotional responses instead of being controlled by them. The ancient Stoics called these overwhelming feelings passions, and they understood something crucial that modern society has completely forgotten. These intense emotions that feel so important, so urgent, so justified, they're actually making everything worse. Think about the last time you got really angry at someone. Did that anger solve the problem? Did it make the situation better? Or did it just leave you drained, stressed, and probably having said something you regret? Here's what the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius discovered while leading an empire through plagues, wars, and political upheaval. The consequences of our emotional reactions are almost always worse than whatever triggered them in the first place. That person who cut you off in traffic. Your road rage is more dangerous than their bad driving. That political news that made you furious. Your anger isn't changing anything except your blood pressure and your mood for the rest of the day. But here's where most people get Stoicism completely wrong. They think it means becoming some kind of emotionless robot who doesn't care about anything. That's not it at all. The goal isn't to eliminate emotions entirely. That's impossible and unhealthy. The goal is to eliminate the destructive emotions while cultivating the constructive ones. Less anger, less anxiety, less jealousy, less fear. More love, more compassion, more wisdom, more connection. Marcus Aurelius himself provides the perfect example of this. Historical records show him grieving deeply when his beloved teacher died. He felt genuine sadness and loss. But what he didn't do was let that grief turn into bitterness, or rage at the world, or destructive behavior. He felt the emotion, processed it, and then used it to fuel his compassion for others who were suffering. There's this fascinating story about the Stoic philosopher Cato. Someone once punched him in a public bathhouse. Afterwards, the person came to apologize, and Cato's response was brilliant. "What? I don't even remember being hit." Now, he wasn't lying or in denial. He was demonstrating something profound about the power of choice. You can choose to hold on to slights and injuries, or you can choose to let them go. You can pretend they didn't happen, not out of weakness, but out of strength. This brings us to one of the most life-changing realizations in all of philosophy. Nobody can make you feel anything. I know that sounds wrong at first. When someone insults you, it feels like they made you angry. When bad news breaks, it feels like the world made you anxious. But here's the truth that will set you free. There's always a gap between the external event and your emotional response. In that gap lies your power to choose. Someone writes a nasty comment about you online. That's just words on a screen, but then you decide those words are offensive. You choose to take offense. You participate in your own emotional reaction. The Stoics called this being complicit in taking offense. It takes two to tango, as they say. The other person provides the stimulus, but you provide the response. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. Our brains are wired to react emotionally first and think rationally later. That's how we survived as a species. But we're not running from lions anymore. Most of the things that trigger our fight or flight response are not actual physical threats. They are just inconveniences, disagreements, or things that don't align with our preferences. Let me give you a practical example. You're driving, and someone cuts you off. Your immediate reaction might be anger, but in that split second before you decide to honk, yell, or tailgate them, you have a choice. You can ask yourself, is this person's bad driving worth ruining my mood? Is my anger going to teach them to drive better? What if they're rushing to a hospital? What if they made an honest mistake? This isn't about being a pushover. This is about strategic emotional management. The ancient Stoics had a brilliant technique for this. When you feel yourself getting angry, don't say or do anything until you've slowly recited the entire alphabet. Why? Because it forces you to pause. It breaks the automatic reaction pattern. It gives your rational mind time to catch up with your emotional brain. Almost every regrettable thing you've ever said or done happened because you reacted immediately instead of responding thoughtfully. But here's where it gets really interesting. Advanced emotional management isn't just about suppressing your feelings. It's about understanding them so well that you can actually use them strategically. Think about a basketball coach who gets a technical foul on purpose to fire up his team, or a public speaker who channels their nervousness into energy and passion. They're not eliminating emotion, they're directing it. The key is developing what I call emotional distance. Imagine you could step 6 inches outside of yourself and observe your own emotions as they happen. You're still feeling them, but you're also watching yourself feel them. It's like becoming a scientist studying your own emotional reactions. Interesting. I'm getting angry right now. Why is that? What triggered this? Is this anger useful, or is it just making me suffer? This level of self-awareness is incredibly powerful because it breaks the automatic chain from stimulus to reaction. Instead of bad thing happens, you get angry, you do something you regret, you feel worse. The new pattern becomes bad thing happens. You notice you're getting angry, you examine why, you choose your response based on what will actually be helpful. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the world, struggled with anger his entire life. We know this because he wrote extensively about it in his personal journal, which we now call Meditations. He didn't write about managing anger because he was naturally calm. He wrote about it because he had to actively work on it every single day. The fact that he kept returning to this topic shows how challenging and how important it was. One of his most powerful insights was this: the best revenge is not to be like that. When someone treats you badly, Your instinct might be to treat them badly in return, but that just makes you more like them. It degrades your character. The real victory is maintaining your standards, your kindness, your integrity, regardless of how others behave. You win by not letting their behavior change who you are. This doesn't mean being passive or letting people walk all over you. It means choosing your responses based on your values rather than your impulses. Sometimes the Stoic response is to walk away. Sometimes it's to set firm boundaries. Sometimes it's to address the issue directly but calmly. The key is that you're making a conscious choice rather than just reacting. Now, let's talk about something that trips up a lot of people trying to apply these principles: the difference between controlling your emotions and repressing them. Repression doesn't work. If you try to just stuff down your feelings, they'll come out sideways as passive aggression, physical symptoms, or explosive outbursts later. The Stoic approach is different. It's about acknowledging your emotions, understanding where they come from, and then deciding how to respond to them. Think of emotions like weather. You don't control whether it rains, but you do control whether you bring an umbrella. You can't control whether you feel angry, but you can control what you do with that anger. You can let it consume you, or you can use it as information about what matters to you and what boundaries might need to be set. One of the most freeing aspects of this philosophy is realizing that most of the things we worry about are completely outside our control. The stock market, other people's opinions, natural disasters, political outcomes, whether our favorite team wins. We can influence some of these things slightly, but we can't control them. What we can control is how we prepare for them, how we respond to them, and how we let them affect our inner peace. The Stoics developed this concept called circles of concern. Imagine concentric circles around yourself. The inner circle contains things completely within your control: your thoughts, your actions, your responses, your effort, your character. The next circle contains things you can influence but not control: your relationships, your work projects, your health to some extent. The outer circles contain things you have little to no control over: the economy, the weather, other people's behavior, global events. Most people spend most of their emotional energy on the outer circles while neglecting the inner circle. They're constantly upset about things they can't change while ignoring the things they can. The Stoic approach is to focus your attention and energy primarily on that inner circle, where you actually have power. This doesn't mean you don't care about the bigger world. In fact, Stoicism encourages expanding your circle of concern to include all of humanity. But it means you engage with those larger issues from a place of inner stability rather than emotional chaos. You can't help others if you're drowning in your own reactions to every crisis and outrage. Let me share something that might surprise you. You're not the first person to live through seemingly impossible times. The Stoics lived under Nero, one of history's most notorious tyrants. They dealt with plagues that killed millions. They lived through wars, political corruption, economic collapse. Every generation thinks they're living in uniquely terrible times, but humans have always faced enormous challenges. The difference is that previous generations didn't have 24-hour news cycles designed to keep them in a constant state of fear and outrage. They didn't have social media algorithms optimized to show them the most emotionally triggering content possible. They faced their challenges without the added burden of being constantly reminded of every terrible thing happening everywhere in the world. This is why the ancient wisdom is more relevant now than ever. We need practical tools for maintaining our sanity and effectiveness in an information environment that's literally designed to overwhelm us. We need to remember that our job is not to solve every problem in the world or to have an emotional response to every injustice. Our job is to focus on what we can actually control and do that well. Here's a practical exercise you can start today. For 1 week, pay attention to what triggers your strongest emotional reactions. Don't try to change anything yet. Just observe. Notice what makes you angry, anxious, frustrated, or upset. Then ask yourself, is this something I can actually control or change? If yes, what specific action can I take? If no, why am I spending emotional energy on it? You'll probably discover that most of your emotional suffering comes from focusing on things outside your control. Traffic jams, other people's decisions, past events, future possibilities, global problems. All important in their own way, but not areas where your emotional reactions are going to make any positive difference. The goal isn't to stop caring about these things entirely. The goal is to engage with them from a place of calm effectiveness rather than emotional reactivity. When you see injustice, respond with purposeful action rather than just outrage. When you face uncertainty, prepare as best you can and then accept what you can't control. When people disappoint you, maintain your own standards while adjusting your expectations. This brings us to one of the most practical aspects of Stoic philosophy: the power of acceptance. Now, acceptance doesn't mean resignation or passivity. It doesn't mean giving up or not trying to improve things. It means acknowledging reality as it is rather than fighting against things you can't change. There's a beautiful example of this in New Orleans, a city that's been dealing with dysfunction, natural disasters, and systemic problems for centuries. The people who thrive there have learned what the Stoics called the art of acquiescence. When the streetcar is late, when there's a sinkhole in the road, when the bureaucracy is impossible to navigate, they don't waste energy being outraged about it. They accept it as part of the cost of living in an amazing, historic, unique place. This doesn't mean they don't work for improvements where possible, but they don't let their happiness depend on everything functioning perfectly. They've learned to work with reality instead of demanding that reality conform to their preferences. You can apply the same principle to every area of your life. Your job has frustrating aspects. That's the cost of having income and professional challenges. Your family members have annoying habits. That's the cost of having people who love you in your life. Your city has traffic problems. That's the cost of living somewhere with economic opportunity and interesting people. This perspective shift is incredibly liberating. Instead of being constantly irritated by the gaps between how things are and how you think they should be, you start seeing challenges as part of the package. You stop wasting energy on resentment and start channeling that energy toward making the best of the situation you're actually in. The final piece that I want to leave you with is this. Becoming emotionally resilient isn't a one-time achievement, it's a daily practice. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up one morning and become perfectly stoic. He worked on these principles every single day for his entire life. He wrote daily reminders to himself about staying calm, focusing on what he could control, and treating others with compassion even when they frustrated him. The good news is that this gets easier with practice. Just like physical exercise, emotional exercise builds strength over time. Each time you choose to pause instead of react, each time you focus on your response instead of blaming external circumstances, each time you find calm in the middle of chaos, you're building your emotional resilience. Start small. The next time someone cuts you off in traffic, practice staying calm. The next time you see triggering news, practice taking a breath before you react. The next time someone criticizes you, practice responding thoughtfully instead of defensively. These small moments of conscious choice add up to massive changes in your overall quality of life. Remember, the goal isn't to become an emotionless robot. The goal is to become someone who can stay centered in the storm, who can think clearly under pressure, who can respond to challenges with wisdom instead of just reacting with emotion. The world needs more people like this. Your family needs you to be like this. You deserve the peace and effectiveness that comes with this level of emotional mastery. The chaos isn't going away. If anything, our world is going to get more complex and overwhelming in the coming years. But you don't have to be overwhelmed by it. You can learn to stay calm, focused, and effective regardless of what's happening around you. That's not just good for you. It's good for everyone whose life you touch. And that's how individual inner peace becomes a force for positive change in the world.